So listening is not the act of hearing the words spoken. It is the art of understanding the meaning behind those words. And when people say you're not listening to me, and we simply parrot back the words that they were said, congratulations, your ears work. That is the act. That is the act of listening. Um, but the art of listening is creating an environment in which the other person feels heard. Now you notice what I said there. The other person, and I used an emotional word, feels, right? I don't want to know that you heard the words. I want to feel heard. I want to feel seen. I want to feel understood.
Listening is a tool, a divine tool and skill that does not happen through your ears. Your listening is a function of who you are. How you hear someone or something is filtered by your personal and social judgments, your expectations, your experiences, your history of or with a person, and your personal needs at the time of the communication. Your listening is colored and sometimes clouded by your age or gender, your cultural experience, your religious and spiritual foundation, your education and intellectual development, and your core beliefs about who you are, what life is, and why the communication is taking place. In other words, how you hear what you are listening to is a function of who you are and what's going on inside of you. What you are thinking, feeling, expecting, and experiencing in the moment will determine how well you hear what is said, or if you can only hear what you're listening to on the inside. Every experience, whether pleasant or not so much, begins with a conversation. This means our ability to hear what is being said on the outside is determined by the quality of the conversation we are having on the inside. True listening, good listening, requires that we come to every conversation, every communication, every interaction open, empty, and ready to hear. Life whispers to you all the time. Your life is speaking to you all around, from the time you wake up in the morning and every single experience that's coming into your personal space, into your physical space. All of those experiences are speaking to you. They're telling you something about your life and about your circumstances. It whispers, and if you don't get the whisper gets louder. If you don't get the whisper, when it gets louder, it gets, I call it like a little pebble, like a little thump upside your head. When I was a kid, if I was doing something my grandmother didn't like, she'd just turn around and thump me. She wouldn't even look at me. She'd just give me a thump, and I'd know. That's my cue to stop it, or we're gonna get worse. The whisper is the message, the pebble or the thump upside the head. Usually it's gone into a problem. You don't pay attention to the problem becomes a brick upside your head. The brick upside your head is a crisis. You don't pay attention to the brick upside your head. The crisis turns into a disaster, and the whole house brick wall comes falling down. You don't need to overthrow your emotions to experience a revolution in your life. You just need to overthrow the lies you have believed about your emotions. The Creator designed your heart to be a garden, not a war zone. A truly powerful life isn't won, it's cultivated.
When we think about how important it is for you to have heart in everything you do, it's what makes us different from every other creature, the depth of our emotional capacity.
One of the things that really has been necessary to this unnatural compartmentalization of ourselves has been a disconnection from our bodies. And whether that means keep on going, goal chasing, achievement chasing, no matter how tired you are, the whole I'll sleep when I'm dead. What we're really saying is disconnect from what your body is telling you about what you need and keep going instead. Or put your feelings aside and just trust God. We're being told to disconnect from our emotions and that will help us with our faith. Well, emotions are bodily experiences. And so we have to disconnect from our bodies in a way to ignore our emotions. And so when I say reconnect, sit with, be in your body, just taking the time to listen to what this space that we live in is saying and doing and trying to communicate to us, that we'll actually start to notice that a lot of things are happening at once. I can quietly listen until my own heartbeat is audible to me, until my own breathing is palpable to me, and realizing all of those things are happening at once, because our discontent really is about this internal battle where we're going to give our attention rather than a holistic approach to how we realize it without realizing it, that our emotions are bodily experiences. And one of the ways that we try to regulate them is through chemicals. So whether that's heroin or cheesecake, we're trying to alter our body's chemistry in a way that brings us into another emotional state. And that's what we call regulation. We're trying to regulate the flow. But you can do that more in a more healthy way. You can do that by connecting to someone you care about. You can do that by breathing exercises. You can do that by going for a run. You can do that by sitting and meditating. So making sure you drink water and eat healthy food. There are other ways for me to connect with my body for that regulation. If we've been traumatized as children, especially, our regulation is damaged. And that is a literal biological effect and not a I need to think my way out of this effect.
To be unseen, I think, is the worst.
It's the deepest trauma. That's the devastating part, is no one sees my pain and no one tells me I'm allowed to be in pain.
That's right. And then when you grow up and internalize it, or it shows up, people try to tell you you're crazy, or more interestingly, that it didn't matter.
That it didn't matter.
And one of the things that I have learned in all the years of interviewing so many thousands of people is that is the one thing everybody is looking for, is for the validation.
The
that I matter,
validation. And
right?
you have that child inside and you begin to believe it didn't matter. And so you silence him or her. And that is so scary. And that perpetuates generational trauma, because what I've seen in clients that I've worked with for 20 years is that how you treat the child inside of you is how you will treat the child in front of you. And if you minimize the pain you have inside, buck up. You got this. You won't see that they're hurting. You won't see the abuse that's happening because you ignore the child inside of you. Well, we know how we feel because emotions begin in our bodies.
Yes.
So if anyone takes a moment now to think of something that made them a little sad, I don't want people to go too far, and just close your eyes and notice where in your body you feel it. Very often people say they feel it around their heart. There's a heaviness here, kind of a weightiness.
A tightness.
Yeah, a tightness. But then also, as that sadness intensity increases, arms tend to feel heavy, legs tend to feel heavy, our limbs kind of deactivate, and so we're slower. We get that fatigue. Sometimes our shoulders are dropping. So sadness shows up in our body literally that way.
In terms of lethargy, you become more
right.
lethargic. Yes.
Very much so. And in intense situations, the cortisol rush from that kind of sadness can even change the shape of our heart. It's called Takotsubo syndrome, or broken heart syndrome, and it has killed people. After the Uvalde shooting, the husband of one of the teachers that was killed, he went to put flowers near her memorial and had a heart attack and died. Broken heart syndrome. It actually changes the shape of the heart, so the way that it pumps is insufficient. A broken heart can literally kill us. And so sadness does show up in the body. It's very dangerous for our health if we don't attend to it.
As a trauma therapist, you obviously recognize that we're at a time where 10 years ago you were saying these things, people couldn't hear it in the same way they can hear it now. Now everybody feels that they can speak about it more openly, I think. But where do you think we're headed?
If we don't change the way that we view our emotions and how we treat ourselves and our bodies, we're headed somewhere really scary. Because after the pandemic, that was a trauma for everyone. Our bodies are not in the same condition. We get tired more quickly. Our patience is shorter. Our immune systems are shot from the stress, so we get sick more easily. If we don't slow down and begin to engage our emotions in a healthy way and strengthen our nervous system, heal our bodies, we're headed somewhere really scary. We're going to see death rates increase from chronic disease. We are going to see family relationships falling apart. We are going to see children increasingly showing the signs of intense depression and anxiety. If we don't get a hold of ourselves and each other, we're going somewhere really scary.
Let me tell you about a voice. Not this voice, but the one inside. The one that whispers. It tells me what's right and what's not, when to leave and where to go. It's not Shakespeare. It does not speak in memorable lines. My inner voice always gives it to me straight. Tells me who my real friends are. When to say yes, when to say no. Whether the person sitting next to me is the one I'll be spending the rest of my life with. Or not. Sometimes that voice is crystal clear. Go, stay, right, wrong. Sometimes it merely whispers. Don't let it drown in a noisy world, because in the end, no man, woman, or algorithm knows what's right for you. Always trust your inner voice. Everybody has one. Few listen to it.
So many of us have looked to Jesus at different times to give us strength. I want to point out how incredibly emotionally expressive Jesus was. That Jesus let his pain out. We feel like we're supposed to hold it in. Jesus is standing in front of the tomb of Lazarus, weeping in public. We don't even want to cry in public when it's appropriate.
You don't want anybody to know you are crying.
Right,
Yes,
ever.
yes.
But Jesus weeps in public, even though he knew he was about to raise Lazarus from the dead. He still expressed the pain of the moment. We don't feel like we have time or space to express the pain of the moment. We see Jesus in the temple angry. He's like flipping tables. He's whipping folks who are misbehaving. And then he invites people into the temple and he heals them. And then we see him in Gethsemane, terrified, crying, again expressing it publicly. And then he goes down out of the garden and says, I am he that you're looking for. And he knocks all these soldiers off their feet with his voice. What I want so many Black women who have turned to Jesus for strength to avoid their emotion to see is that Jesus expressed his emotional pain. And every single time he had a breakdown, something spiritually powerful happened immediately. There's something in that authenticity, in that brokenness, in that release that seems to allow a wave of spiritual power right behind it. When we step out of our power and allow God's power, that's the shift that we need.
Never let the odds keep you from doing what you know in your heart you are meant to do.
I have to remind myself that some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. And when they fly away, the part of you that knows it was a sin to lock them up does rejoice.
And what I started to hear was that what people are really saying is, did you hear me? Did you hear me? And did what I say mean anything to you? And so I started to listen with that in mind, with that intention of validating that you're being here, you're speaking to me, you're taking the time to do this with me is important because you matter. And that's true for everybody who's watching or listening, that every argument that you ever have, every encounter, the person just wants to know, did you hear me? Did you see me? And did I say anything that mattered? I can tell you that every single person I've ever talked to, whether they were victims of violence or the person who committed the violence, whether they were celebrities or whether they were going through difficult times in their life. When I finished the interview, almost to a person, at some point, one would lean into me and say, was that okay? Was that okay? Was I all right? Even Beyonce and all her Beyonce-ness. At the end of a performance where she was as Beyonce as you could get, leaned in and said, was that okay? And what I learned in all those thousands of interviews is that there's a common denominator in the human experience that we all share. We all want to know that what we do and what we say and who we are matters. We want to be validated. Every single person in every single confrontation, every single encounter that you have, whether it's with the guy at the supermarket or in the toll booth or your boss or your children, every argument is really about, do you see me? Do you see me? Does what I say mean anything to you? Do I matter to you?
Well, my life is a class, if I was to say. It probably teaches that you can be yourself and an individual if you are comfortable with not everybody liking you or how you think. If you're comfortable with going against the grain, if you're comfortable with, people making fun or saying really nasty stuff. If you're comfortable with all of that, and you can be yourself. That's the price. The price of being yourself is, other people's angst about you being yourself. The other part of the class is that mistakes are okay. And flip out only when you need to, but then really flip out, go all out. But, make it a choice time when it really means something, And remember, we're all kids at heart. Everybody wants to hear something nice. Just be nice to people. It's not that difficult. That's Whoopi 101, I think.
Who am I trying to move? And where are they in this, right? And when you're the president of the United States or the first lady, you have a big platform, I've always felt like I have a responsibility to set my feelings aside and think about, where are you? Why are you so angry? Where is your hate coming from? Because yeah, I can be mad at your hate. I can be mad that you just said something racist or you knocked me down a peg or you misjudged me. But if I'm trying to fix the relationship, I've got to understand, what are you going through? I don't lose my authenticity in that because I know who I am, right? But I have to make room to understand who you are. That's either strategy or empathy. But to me, effective communication, especially if you're a leader, if you have the power, it requires a step back. Which is also why I think we have to learn how to hear people throughout, right? We have to give people a space to be heard outside of the anger, right? Because that's where all that's coming from, right? When people can't mature their response, it's because they don't have a voice. It's like, if I don't have a voice in regular conversation, then I will make you hear me.
Work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because you only when you're full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself. It's miraculous when you think about it.
Like a lot of girls, I was pretty feisty. I was a tomboy. I climbed the trees and I wrestled. And then suddenly you were supposed to have boyfriends and you had to be a certain way. You had to be popular and you had to be thin and you had to be what they wanted you to be. That became a very difficult time in my life. Partly, I was suffering for the loss of that wonderful, strong, brave girl that I had been. I was mourning the loss of her. And so I slept a lot and didn't know what to do with myself, and I was floundering. My father called me frivolous and lazy. He didn't realize that I was suffering. Starving myself, anorexic, bulimic, etc. and so forth, you know, I'll be perfect. I was on this toxic quest for perfection, and it is toxic. I should have known better because I saw lots of women who weren't perfect, who were beloved. One very fun story that happened to me, I must have been about 16. My father was married to an Italian woman, and she was a bit of a jet setter, and we were in the south of France. We rented a house on the Mediterranean, and all kinds of famous people would come and spend the day, you know, including Jackie Kennedy and Elsa Maxwell and all kinds of fancy people. And one day, Greta Garbo came to lunch and looked at me and said, "Would you like to come swimming with me?" Well, first of all, none of the people that ever came there ever noticed me or looked at me or countenanced me, much less went swimming. Nobody went swimming. They were too worried about their hair or whatever. And I was so, yes, I want to go swimming with you. And she disappeared and came out in a bathrobe with one of those serious white rubber shower caps on, you know, those swimming caps on. And we walked down the stairs and got to the bottom, and she dropped her bathrobe. And she was naked. And she wasn't perfect. She was an athlete. She was muscular. She was sturdy. And it made me so happy that she was just a good, healthy body. And she dove right into the cold water. I put my toe in. I was so ashamed. It took me so long to get into the water. I remember on the way, I was swimming out and she was coming back, and we kind of met, bobbing in the water, and she looked at me right in the eye and she said, "Do you want to be an actress?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, you're pretty enough." And I think I swallowed about a ton of water. I was so shocked. And I think I had a Cheshire grin on my face for the rest of the day. It was a great experience. It took me a long, long time to realize we are not meant to be perfect. We're meant to be whole.
I think I must be on the wrong path.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because something bad happened to you?
Yeah.
Something you thought was bad? What if it was the best thing that ever happened? One of the stories I love to tell, which is St. Augustine. It's an old story from St. Augustine, when this man said to Augustine, "I've been praying for what? Gold. And why do you want gold?" "Because I'm poor." "And what else? But what would you do with it?" And he says, Augustine says to him, "Tell me about your life." He says, "Well, I have family, and I have food, and I have friends." And he said, "That sounds like gold to me." He says, "But I don't have real gold." And Augustine said, "Well, what would you do with it?" "Well, I would hire my friends, and they would work for me, and then I wouldn't have to work." And Augustine said, "Well, I can understand why God hasn't given you gold." "Why?" "Because it would turn your heart into someone bitter, and you would abuse your friends. And I can see why God has been so fair and just by not giving you the answer to your prayer, by not giving you what you think you want. He's protected you from the worst of you."
Just when you hyper-focus almost, when you become present in the moment, you can actually hear what your inner voice is telling you.
Yeah, and you can't pay attention to what's going on in your life if you're focused on what's going to happen tomorrow.
That's right.
Or what's going to happen in the next hour.
Or what's
what
happened
happened
before.
You got to heal the past so it doesn't follow you for the rest of your life.
You'll drag it around for the rest of your life.
Yes.
I suggest that you entertain considering the possibility that you are a powerful and creative, compassionate, and loving spirit. Now, that may seem a lot, but try that on for size. And if you find that it doesn't fit, If you find that there's a distance between who you are, you think you are, and what you say and what you do and the way that you behave, and a powerful and creative, compassionate, and loving spirit, then also consider that that distance is the distance that you have to travel. That is your spiritual path. That's your curriculum in the Earth School.
Keep your face always toward the sunshine, and shadows will fall behind you.
Some call me nature. Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years, 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve.
It's a new time in the Earth's history in which we're not just inhabiting our planet, we're operating as stewards of the very thing that we're living on.
Since the Industrial Revolution, humanity has been running an unintentional experiment in Earth's atmosphere, pushing the climate to new extremes.
Things are gonna get hot.
Oh, you can feel the heat. This is insane. Oh my God.
Attitudes have changed rapidly because everyone can see for themselves the climate change that is occurring.
A child born today will witness across her lifetime a planet transformed by rising temperature.
I got you.
How did we get here?
Every time you get in your car, every time you fly a plane, every time you turn the heat on, all of those things are putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And if there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, there's a higher temperature.
And now temperatures have started to spike.
If we keep pumping billions of tons of CO2 into the atmosphere each year, we really will cook ourselves, literally, in the end.
To stop the worst impacts of planetary heating,
We need rapid emissions cuts, starting now.
A rise of 3 degrees would affect everyone. Even wealthy cities in rich countries wouldn't be immune to the consequences. European capitals like Paris and Berlin would bake under more extreme heat waves. Frequent storm surges in New York could turn parts of the city desolate.
In many ways, cities magnify, intensify climate events. Cities are hotter than the places around them. They tend to be more vulnerable to flooding, and you can get a really bad event in a city in a way that you can't in the countryside.
And because of their denser populations, disasters in a city affect far more people. Some cities might be badly prepared for the changes coming, but they have the means to adapt.
Fire emergencies across the West, including a series of warnings and evacuation orders in California, where firefighters are struggling to contain a massive lake fire, which exploded to over 19,000 acres. Kana Whitworth is in Santa Barbara, California for us. Good morning, Kana.
Yeah, Michael, good morning. So throughout the West, the fire behavior has been described as dangerous and erratic. Here on the lake fire at the beginning, the flames were moving so fast they were scorching 600 acres every single hour.
Nature is a key ally. Wherever we restore the wild, it will recapture carbon and help us bring back balance to our planet. We're going to have to learn together how to achieve this, ensuring none are left behind. We must use this opportunity to create a more equal world. And our motivation should not be fear, but hope. Oh my gosh, look at the harbor. Oh my gosh.
If anybody's still out here, the fire is on Front Street and it is time to go.
I am the forest. I take in your pollution and give you clean air. Purify your water and protect your shores. Yet you continue to cut me down, releasing carbon into the air and heating this planet. While some of you stand with me, most of you turn your backs on me. But I am resilient. Let me grow, and we can solve your climate problem together. When one tree falls, you might not hear it. But when millions fall, I assure you, you will feel it.
I am the ocean. I'm water. I'm most of this planet. I shaped it. Every stream, every cloud, and every raindrop, it all comes back to me. One way or another, every living thing here needs me. I'm the source. I'm what they crawled out of. Humans, they're no different. I don't owe them a thing. I give, they take, but I can always take back. That's just the way it's always been. It's not their planet anyway. Never was, never will be. But humans, they take more than their share. They poison me, then they expect me to feed them. Well, it doesn't work that way. If humans want to exist in nature with me and off of me, I suggest they listen close. I'm only going to say this once.
If nature isn't kept healthy, humans won't survive. Simple as that. I mean, I could give a damn with or without humans. I'm the ocean. I covered this entire planet once, and I can always cover it again.
I am water. To humans, I am simply just there. I'm something they just take for granted. But there is only so much of me, and more of them every single day. I start as rain in the mountains, flow to the rivers and streams, and end up in the ocean. Then the cycle begins again. And it will take me 10,000 years to get back to the state I'm in now. But to humans, I'm just water, just there.
It's thirsty. Give water.
You can tell he's been fed before, huh?
How do I give it water? That is too cute. That is cute.
The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
Arctic polar bears are facing near extinction by the end of the century if the sea ice they depend on continues to disappear. That's the stark warning from a new study looking at the long-term future of the bears as greenhouse gas emissions contribute to the melting of the bears' frozen hunting grounds. Our science correspondent Victoria Gill has the story.
They are the poster species for climate change. Predators that depend on a fragile, transient hunting ground, the Arctic sea ice. And this study has shown that polar bears' survival is tied to that ice. The scientists used models based on satellite data to forecast sea ice decline in the Arctic over the coming decades. That enabled them to predict a future tipping point, to create a timeline for when the frozen hunting season will be too short for the bears to fatten up before the summer. At the current rate of warming, the researchers say all but a few polar bear populations will collapse before 2100.
With less fat, they're entering a fasting season that's longer than it used to be.
So is that now unavoidable? Are we already on that trajectory to just lose polar bears?
The trajectory that we're on now is not a good one. But if society gets its act together globally, we can halt global warming in time to save polar bears. And if we do, we'll benefit the rest of life on Earth, including ourselves.
The consequences of climate change are already playing out in the Arctic landscape. And this new timeline, the researchers say, is a stark reminder that the survival of an entire species is at stake.
Scientists have been warning us about climate change for years. And the world certainly took notice a couple of weeks ago when a video of a starving, disoriented polar bear made its way around the planet on social media.
Polar bears are considered the canary in the coal mine for climate change. Here in western Hudson Bay, this particular population of polar bears was one of the first to show the impacts of climate change. We've seen changes in body condition in bears. We've seen changes in survival in relation to shifting sea ice dynamics, and we've also seen changes in reproduction. There used to be around 1,200 polar bears here in western Hudson Bay, and now there's around 935 bears. Bears on shore here in western Hudson Bay fast for several months every year, and that fasting period is getting longer and longer.
But there is still hope. The latest scientific studies have shown that we are not too late to make changes and stop a climate catastrophe.
The choices that we make today determine our future. How much carbon are we going to continue producing? If we stay on our current pathway, we're going to see rapid changes to a world that looks nothing like the world that we grew up in, within our lifetime and definitely within our children's lifetime. Whereas if we can wean ourselves off of all of this carbon, the world will look like a very different place, a place where animals like the polar bear have the time and the ability they need to adapt. Not just about the polar bear, though. It's about us, that our agricultural systems have time to adapt, our energy systems, our water systems, to make sure that we as humans...
Look up. There I am. I am the sky. I am a warm and protective blanket wrapped around everyone on Earth. I can bring clouds, rain, and wind. I can be an ice storm. Without me, you'd fry. Every day, I am the breath you take in, yet you are making me sick. I am congested, off balance, polluted. You see, I am more delicate than you think. It took millions of years to get it just right. My perfect mix of gases, temperature, and weather that you enjoy. But now your cars, your factories, and dust, they have pushed me past the limit. And you wonder why my typhoons and tornadoes are more intense, more frequent. I have become unpredictable. Less rain here, a lot more rain there. Hotter summers, colder winters. I cannot even control myself anymore. Enough about me. I will show my changing self to you in your days ahead. But in the end, I'll be fine. Give me a few thousand years. I have weathered trauma before. I am not worried for myself. Look up.
I want to end with this. Yeah. There are no mistakes. There really aren't any, because you have a supreme destiny. When you're in your little mind, in your little personality mind, where you're not centered, where you really don't know who you are, that you come from something greater and bigger, and that we really all are the same. When you don't know that, you get all flustered. You get stressed all the time, wanting something to be what it isn't. There is a supreme moment of destiny, calling, on your life. Your job is to feel that, to hear that, to know that. And sometimes when you're not listening, you get taken off track. You get in the wrong marriage, the wrong relationship, you take the wrong job. Yeah, but it's all leading to the same path. There are no wrong paths. There are none. There's no such thing as failure, really, because failure is just that thing trying to move you in another direction. So you get as much from your losses as you do from your victories, because the losses are there to wake you up.
Right now, we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale. Our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change. If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon. The world's people have spoken. Their message is clear. Time is running out.
The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now is 50% higher than it was in 1900. And not only are we piling in more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but we are chopping down the forests of the earth at a great rate. And the forests themselves are the most efficient consumers of carbon dioxide that there are on Earth. We're going to destroy the ground because the soil of a rainforest isn't very good. We are actually tampering with the climate of the Earth and with the very atmosphere that we breathe. When we talk about the disappearance of the ozone layer, we don't know what will happen when the ozone layer goes. The world has become so fragile that we cannot subject the Earth to the tortures we can now inflict upon it. When we talk about the greenhouse effect, we're talking about something that affects the entire Earth. And these problems are life and death problems. They go to the root of the viability of the planet itself. So if there's one thing that is biologically certain about the human species is that it is a human species, one species.
If we don't stop the destruction of our natural world, nothing else will matter. Simply put, if we don't protect nature, we can't protect ourselves.
Your head close to my heart.